Hello, hello, hello. Next video is on Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is another one of the Bronte sisters. Last time we had Charlotte with Jane Eyre, now we have Emily. So, Wuthering Heights. This is another example of Gothic fiction. And here on the screen you can see a character sheet. And I'll try to explain one by one while also answering questions what's even happening in the novel. So, right here in the corner, with this fabulous mustache, we have Lockwood. He's an outsider that arrives at the moors where they live. And he meets Nellie Dean, this lady here. She was a housekeeper at the house of the Earnshaws. And she's the insider. So the narrator, or the narration looks like this. We have many narrators. We have Nellie, who knows the story but is subjective because she has her own opinions and emotions on situations. We have Lockwood, who is an outsider, and we also have insight into people's private letters within, so it's fragmented narration. This means that it may be unreliable. However, readers still identify with the narrator, so we end up having similar opinions to Lockwood and Nellie. Another important thing, or important ideas for this book, is analepsis and prolepsis. Analepsis is a flashback, and prolepsis is a flash forward. And this is important because the story is anachronic, meaning it's not chronological. We start off knowing how it ends, maybe not exactly, but we see this culminating point of emotion right before everything goes down, and then we flash back to the very beginning and learn the story from how it started. It's almost in media res, which means in the midst of things. So, it's a very incestuous book, loads of incest, and let's get into the questions. So, narrators, we've done it. Anachrony and analepsis, we've done it. Event, we've done it. Think about the relationships between characters. Is the novel confusing? Simple answer, the novel is extremely confusing. So, if you look at the screen, here we have Hindley Earnshaw, and we have Catherine Earnshaw. They are siblings. There's also Heathcliff, who was orphaned by these guys' father, so technically he is also their sibling, although they have no blood relations. And Catherine Earnshaw is deeply in love with Heathcliff. They love each other from the moment they meet. Of course, they start off as little kids, so it's not sexual or romantic, but they have a strong relationship. However, we need to remember, Catherine is quite well off. She's from the upper class, while Heathcliff is an orphan. From the previous videos, we know how orphans are treated in society. He's basically seen as worthless by others. Here, next characters. Edgar Linton and Isabella are these guys' neighbours. They live, Catherine and Heathcliff live at Wuthering Heights. Edgar and Isabella live at Thrushcross Grange, something like that. So, one day when they are little, Catherine meets these guys and has a deep connection with them because she's accepted, whereas Heathcliff is not accepted by them because he's seen as an orphan. As I said, he's seen as worse. It's also suggested that he's slightly darker skinned and has rougher features, so there may be some slight sort of racist tones regarding the book. But yeah, eventually, Catherine is talking to Nellie, and she really loves Heathcliff, but she knows that she can't marry him because he's poor, he hasn't made a name for himself, and she has to marry Edgar Linton. She in fact chooses to marry Edgar Linton, and she's telling all of this to Nellie right here, and Heathcliff overhears, he gets really mad, and he runs away and abandons the whole house. Catherine ends up marrying Edgar, and one day, suddenly, Heathcliff reappears, and there's a huge love triangle between the couples. Heathcliff ends up marrying Edgar Linton's sister Isabella out of spite, and this happens. Catherine and Edgar have a child, also called Catherine, right here. She's called Cathy, I believe, in the book, so not to confuse her with Catherine. And we have Linton Heathcliff, who is the child of Heathcliff and Isabella. So basically, instead of getting in nice couples, although these two couldn't because they're siblings, so instead they cross over and have these mutant kids. So it's confusing because these children take on loads of characteristics from their parents. They could be seen as these sort of amalgamations of their parents, but at the same time they're not exact, because we see Linton Heathcliff, he's the complete opposite of Heathcliff. Heathcliff is rough and violent and quite a scary man, whereas Linton, as you can even see in the image, is this pussy crybaby, and he's really weak, and he's also a manipulator, but that's something he takes after Heathcliff. So while he may physically be more similar to Isabella, and while he may not have the same character traits as Heathcliff, he is still not a good character, and Catherine is just as bossy and snooty as Catherine Earnshaw, because we have to remember our main protagonists are disgusting people. They are horrible, they are all violent and lying, and they see each other as better than everyone else, and they're just bad people, but still we sort of are made to root for them throughout the novel. So yeah, it's confusing because they have similar names and they share similar traits and they have similar backstories to the parents. How would we classify the emotional and symbolic aspects of Heathcliff and Catherine's relationship? So in the book we see some of the most famous quotes ever, like, "He's more myself than I am, whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same." And this just shows a very toxic love that Catherine and Heathcliff have, because Catherine feels that she is Heathcliff in a twisted and codependent way. They are soulmates, and we mentioned Platonian soulmates, which means that they believe that during creation they were one, and then they were split into two bodies and they have to find each other again. And their love is great in the meaning that it is big, but it is definitely not healthy. And later on, we see Catherine dies while still being married to Edgar, and Heathcliff is so hurt by this that he digs out her grave just to see her and be able to touch her again. And then in the end, all three main characters, so Catherine, Heathcliff and Edgar, die, and they are all buried next to each other in a huge threesome throuple. So their love is twisted and also slightly incestuous, but it's also something very true and something that they can't fight despite wanting to. The only reason they didn't get married is due to social class, which was a very important issue at the time. What elements and aspects of Gothic can we find in this novel? So we have the sublime, we have a creepy setting, we have moors, there's misty, it's kind of scary, they get lost a couple of times there. They have manners with these eerie attitudes. At the beginning of the story, Lockwood sees Catherine Earnshaw's ghost. Also the fact that Heathcliff digs up Catherine's body. So there are many gruesome and slightly creepy elements which make it Gothic. However, it's also melodramatic because there's a love triangle, there's marriage between cousins. There's also hyperbolized emotions because some of them literally get sick and die from heartbreak. So it's very dramatic. And is Wuthering Heights so-called high literature or popular literature? Does it appeal equally to female and male readers? I think this is something to sort of decide on yourself. I would hope that it would appeal to everyone because despite being problematic, it's a really entertaining book. However, I assume that at the time it's more aimed at women because it's pure romance and it's also toxic love. And also, as we can see in Wattpad stories to this day, after, it's literally quoted. Harden quotes the same words from Wuthering Heights to Tessa. So, yeah, it's more female-oriented, and I think we mentioned that high literature was sort of a negative phrase because it appears to be very standoffish and almost too proud. But we said it was more like popular literature because it could appeal to everyone. Something important to mention is the ending of the novel. So earlier I mentioned Hindley, who was Catherine's brother. Well, he did have a son called Hareton, and Hareton was slightly stupid because, he's called dumb throughout the book all the time. He can't read, he can barely speak, and he has a strong Yorkshire accent. However, when all of these guys die, literally every single one of them, from the top row, even Linton fails to succeed. Only Hareton and Catherine and Nellie and Lockwood remain, and Hareton and Catherine fall in love, so despite from being different social classes, they do join into a couple, and it's a sort of bittersweet ending. We are happy because Heathcliff dies, and we're happy because this turns out, but we're also aware of everything toxic that went on, and also these guys are sort of related. Okay, thanks, bye.